So a very good morning to all the distinguished dignitaries, panelists, and the participants who have joined us in this webinar. I am Anil Kathet, Junior Consultant, Center for Hill Area Development, GMR Division from NIDM. And I welcome you all to today's webinar on strengthening integrated flood risk management that is jointly organized by National Institute of Disaster Management, Ministry of Home Affairs, and Department of Geology, Central University of South Bihar. As you are aware, in our country, hydrological disasters are among the most frequent and also have high mortality and damage cost. And talking appropriate of floods that are recurrent phenomena, a chronic issue for our country. And out of total geographical area of our nation, about 12% area is flood prone. And we are also a second most affected country by floods and experienced an average 17 flood events per year and had a total of approximately more than 3 million people are affected due to flooding events. And according to a research by Asian Development Bank, since year 1990, floods account for more than half of climate-related disasters in our country. And it also cost the country over 50 billion US dollars. And comprehending the severity of this flood disaster, we need to adopt the integrated approach for flood risk management. So in today's webinar, we will be pondering on our preparedness against flood, risk management, what are the gaps in our strategies that is exposing us as well as our environment to the window of hydrological disasters such as floods. So in our session of today's webinar, it will be graced with the presence of Professor K.N. Singh, Vice Chancellor of Central University of South Bihar, and Professor Surya Prakash, Head GMR Division NIDM, and Dr. Praful Kumar Singh, who is Head of Department of Geology from Central University of South Bihar. And in technical session, there will be two eminent speakers, Dr. Anil Kumar Lohani, who is Head Surface Water Hydrology Division from National Institute of Hydrology, Roorkee, and Dr. Harjeet Kaur, Junior Consultant from NIDM. And they will be joining us to enlighten us on the theme of the webinar during the technical session. So now to further enlighten on the theme of today's webinar, I pass on the stage to Dr. Praful Kumar Singh, Head Department of Geology from Central University of South Bihar. So with these words, the floor is yours, sir. Over to you, sir.
We are going to organize one collaborative program with National Institute of Technology on one of the important issues related to integrated flood risk management. And we know that the flood is one of the important disasters, or every year it's happened in India, particularly if you see the Bihar. So every year there are some rivers, they got flooded. First of all, I would like to welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Kameswarnath Singh, sir, for his motivating words and blessing of us. Sir, mic to you.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Am I audible to you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. HOD Geology Department, Dr. Praful Kumar Singh ji. Executive Director NIDM, Sri Tej Hassan ji. Professor Surya Prakash, Head GMR Division NIDM. Dr. Anil Kumar Lohani, Head Surface Water Hydrology Division NIH Roorkee. Junior Consultant Dr. Harjeet Kaur, NIDM Coordinator, and participants from different parts of Mahabharati. First and foremost, I would like to congratulate Department of Geology and Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India, National Institute of Disaster Management for their serious efforts in this direction. I am thankful to the organizers that they have invited me to participate in inaugural session and given me an opportunity to interact with you all. The seminar entitled Strengthening Integrated Flood Risk Management is very relevant, significant, and meaningful in present context. And especially the CUESP, Central University of South Bihar, has a greater responsibility in this direction because it is located in Gangetic Plain. And I think Gangetic Plain is most seriously affected area by drought and flood both. And this is a serious challenge to the planners and policy makers. How to manage it? How to prepare a water development and water management policy so that it could overcome the challenges of drought and flood. As a pioneer speaker has told, elaborated in detail, that natural hazards are such natural events that disrupt the established life and livelihood of people relatively in short time. India faces several kinds of natural hazards owing to the particular geotectonic structure, climatic conditions, drainage system dependent on them. If we see the regional expansion and pattern of flood-prone areas in India, almost 45% of the total flood-prone area is located in Gangetic Plain. Right from Haridwar to Ganga Sagar, in length of 2,400 kilometers in flow range of Ganga and its tributaries. The question is, why the concentration of drought flood-prone area is concentrated in Gangetic Plain? Then there are three natural factors which might be considered to prepare a thoughtful water management planning. Number one, the Gangetic Plain is located in middle of Himalaya and Chota Nagpur Plateau. And it has a special character. And if we see the topography, relief, structure of this region, this is made up of alluvial soil. And all the rivers originating from Himalaya flow this flow through this plain. So its relief, topography, soil structure are responsible for flood frequency. Likewise, the climatic conditions are also responsible. Almost 1000 millimeter rainfall is happened within a short span of time, almost 100 days. And this heavy rainfall causes the overflow in the river, and they cause the flood. And if you will see the drainage structure, drainage typology and drainage pattern of this Gangetic plain, mostly rivers flow from west to east through this alluvial soil, and they flow through the meandering and make several meandering and lakes in the whole Gangetic plain. And all of a sudden, whenever there is excessive rain, the water flow is and flash rainfall, flash flood is natural. But the location, climatic conditions, and drainage system and drainage type can't be changed. These are natural factors. Along with these three factors, human encroachment in the river basins is also responsible. To see the encroachment of human settlements, inhabitants in the nearby the bank of rivers, even in the basin somewhere, they interrupt the smooth flow of water. So human interference is also responsible. So if we consider the geotectonic structure, relief and topography and alluvial structure, soil taxonomy, and climatic conditions and drainage pattern, the flood can't be checked. If you say कि बाढ़ को रोकना है, it can't be checked. It can be managed. The thing we have to manage flow of water. How to make a efficient water management which could maintain the smooth flow of rainfall water through the rivers. This is important. And thus, I have no hesitation to say that it needs an integrated approach of hydrologist, geologist, and geographers too. And there is a well-planned integrated approach by the scholars, researchers of hydrology, geology, and geography, and with the participatory experience and perception of affected people, an effective flood management plan would be prepared. I think the experts who are sitting here to discuss and deliver a debate on this important topic will discuss thoroughly on the geodetic structure and topography and drainage taxonomy, drainage pattern, human interference, and geological structure in a broad way, and conclude some concrete conclusions and prepare a plan for water management. The question is not how to check flood. It is not possible. You can't check it. The location and drainage system of this Gangetic plain is such that flood will come always. The answer lies how to make an efficient and effective water management system which could integrate the drought and flood both. And I think the experts which are participating here, they are very capable and competent to discuss on this serious matter, because it is a serious matter. And as you see, we are approaching towards monsoon and flood is about to come. And this has become a every year scenario. So we academicians and researchers have a great responsibility, since our university is located in this plain. We have greater responsibility. And now we are thinking seriously about our role, that what we are doing for our surroundings. Since our university is located here, we are very much serious about this. And I have already thought to prepare, by the help of geology department and newly established geography department, to study the water flow, water level, and prepare a thoughtful water management plan, so that we can send planners and policy makers some inputs for welfare of this region. Again, with these words, I wish all the best to the organizers of this event, and hope that they will resolve some resolutions and prepare some conclusions and recommendations, and our university will send to the planners and policymakers, so that it could be implemented with perspective of regional planning. And again, I wish all my best for success of this seminar. Thanks. Now let it over to Prafullaji.
Thank you so much, sir. After your talk, now all the participants can understand. You have tell us many things, technical aspect related, how we can the basic fundamental aspect why flood is happening in a particular area, and how what is the role of geographers and geologists to manage this. Thereafter, we can involve many persons like geologists, geomorphologists, hydrologists to develop such a plan. So we are very thankful, sir, to you, and I will discuss with regarding how we can develop something related to the flood or water management in this area. I am already working on some aspect, but I will be in touch with you for developing some policy related to this area for flood and drought management. Thank you so much, sir.
Good.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
So
Thank you
now,
very much, sir, for enriching the knowledge of our participant by sharing your vast knowledge and setting the context of today's webinar.
काट दो
This is
आवाज
this
काट
is-
दो बस छोड़ दो आने दो
this-
आपको आवाज आने दो
now I would like to request our next speaker, Dr. Anil Kumar Lohani, for his talk on integrated flood risk management. Sir, please, you're most welcome. Please join.
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Praful Singh. I'm just sharing my screen. Please just on the sharing button. Sharing button is not on. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, sir, you are audible. You are now present. You
Now
can
it's
share your
now
screen.
it's, yeah, share button on. So it's visible. My screen is visible.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Praful Singh. So I'll be talking about the integrated flood risk management. So the outline of my presentation is just I'll talk about the little bit about the flood problems in India, integrated flood risk management, then the flood forecasting services in India, Rapti River flood forecasting system, real-time decision support system for BBMB, floodplain zoning, glacial lake flood modeling. So all different aspects of the flood modeling I'll be touching about. So basically, when we talk about the floods, so first of all, we have to see what are the basic causes of the floods. So here I have just mentioned. So important causes are the rain, snow and ice melt, ice jams, landslide, dam failure, and the Glock. So before dealing with the floods, we have to understand what are the causes of the floods. So accordingly, we can just plan the management scheme for the flood. Okay, so when flood comes, so there are various factors about the flood. So these are the basin factors are there. Some of them are stable in nature, some of them are variable in nature. Then the drainage network, then the channel factors. So the whole management practice of the flood depends on that. Now, as far as the floods are concerned, there are, I mentioned the causes of the flood, but that there are various types of the floods are there. So accordingly, the management practices are different. So the types of the floods are the flash floods, then the single event floods, multiple event floods, maybe the seasonal floods, then the direct floods, then the flood due to drainage congestion, and the glacial lake outburst flood. So accordingly, we have to plan our system so that we can manage the floods. Now, as far as in our country, the flood problem is concerned, so about 41 million hectares or the nearly 1/8 is considered to be flood prone, and about 8.6 million hectare of land area is annually affected. And the average annual damage of the is of the order of 25,000 millions. Then we all know that recently we have seen some of the big floods like in Uttarakhand flood 2013, that the Kedarnath tragedy, each and everybody knows about those things. So some of the glimpses of those floods. Then we have seen some flooding in the Asiganga in the Uttarakhand areas because of the cloudburst. So a number of cloudburst events took place over there. Then very recently in 2021, we have seen the Chamoli disaster in Uttarakhand. We also remember the floods in Kerala 2018, floods in Chennai 2015. So likewise, the number of flood events we have seen, and very large flood events. So and very devastating flood events. So here, if you just see, as far as the flooding is concerned, so area susceptible to the flood and damage in 1960, it was around 19 million hectare. And in recent times, it is around 59 million hectare. And the possible reasons of this increase in the flooding is that urbanization and industrial expansion is there, deforestation, then overexploitation and misuse of the catchments, this is causing low water retention and then increased runoff, and also encroachment in the floodplains. So lots of encroachment is there in the floodplains. Okay, number of colonies are coming, people are residing in the floodplains. So this is also causing the increase in the flooding. So this is the area liable to the flood in our country, and the aggregated extent of the inundation area in the country based on the satellite data from 1984 to 2019. Now, as far as the flood problems is concerned in our country, so the main problem in India with respect to the floods are inundation, drainage congestion due to urbanization, and the bank erosion. These are some of the important problems. And these problems depends on the river system, topography of the place, and the flow phenomena. If you see in our country, we can divide our country in different flood zones, okay, in different zones as far as the floods are concerned. So we can say that the Brahmaputra river basin, Ganga river basin, then the northwest river basins, and the central India and Deccan river basins. Then when we talk about the characteristics of floods in India, so chronic flood prone basins are the Ganga and Brahmaputra basins. Then we have the flooding in Himalayan rivers due to high discharge during monsoon month. And then we see the deposition of the sediment, which also causes the rise in the river bed and the reduced channel carrying capacity. And floods associated with the cyclones, as in Gujarat, Odisha, and Andhra Pradesh. So as far as the magnitude of the flood damage is concerned, so area affected due to flood in India, you just see from 1953 to 2016, I marked how the area affected is changing. Then the population affected due to the floods in India. So this is the population affected because of the flood. Then the damage to the crop due to flood in India. So this is the damage to the crop because of the flood. Then the human life lost due to the floods in India. So most of these are in the increasing trend. Then the total damage as crops, house, and public utilities due to the floods in India. So these are the total damages are concerned. Now, as far as flood is concerned, as I mentioned that we have to manage the floods. So there are two important things how we can manage. One is through the structural measures we can manage the floods, and another one is the non-structural measures. So under the structural measures, we can construct the multiple purpose reservoirs, retarding structures, then the channel improvements, which basically increases the flood carrying capacity of the river, then the embankment for the protection of the cities and other places, then the detention basin we can create the floodways, which basically divert the flood flows from one channel to the another, and overall improvement in the drainage system we can have. Then we can have the water transfer, means from the water excess basin to the water deficit basin we can transfer the water. Okay, this can also reduce the flooding in such basins. Then we also have some non-structural measures. So under the non-structural measures, one can go for the real-time flood forecasting, then the floodplain zoning, flood inundation mapping, flood insurance scheme, dam break flood simulation, and then glacial lake outburst flood modeling, or the Glock modeling. Now, when we talk about the floods, so we have to go for the integrated flood risk management. So under the integrated flood risk management, one part is that integration of the whole system, okay, means the interconnectedness and the linkages between the sectors, stakeholders, etc. And there should be political will for implementation of various policies, formation of the legislation. Then there are certain concerns are there, like the transboundary concerns are there. Some of the rivers are the transboundary rivers, so we have to have proper treaties with those countries and other. Then the comprehensive approach based on the risk assessment. We should plan for the mitigation, preparedness, responses, and the recovery. Then the participation that include the stakeholders, including community and the minority groups. So with that, we can go for the integrated flood risk management. Instead of going individually with the in single task, we can integrate the whole system, and then basically the benefits will be more for the under these kinds of the scheme. So integrated flood risk management, when we talk, the objectives are the sustainable development, then the maximizing net benefits from the floodplains that ensure the livelihood securities and poverty alleviation and the reduction of the vulnerability. Then the minimizing loss of life and the environmental preservation. So these are some of the objectives of the integrated flood management. Then how we can manage the risk through the integrated flood management. So we can go for the flood and drought management, effective use of the flood waters, groundwater and surface water interaction on flood plains, then the cross-sectoral integration of disaster management studies, then the disaster risk assessment, and the early warning and forecast. Now, as far as in our country, there are various departments, they are dealing with the flood forecasting and the flood management. Like as far as the flood forecasting is concerned, so the flood forecasting is mainly dealt by the Central Water Commission at the central level. So Central Water Commission is forecasting the water level in the main rivers. Okay, so they forecast the river water level for the towns and habitats. They also forecast the reservoir info and the inundation forecasted for the areas likely to be inundated, and the Glock and landslide advisory they are also providing. So basically the Central Water Commission flood forecasting system, it is integrated with the IMD rainfall forecast. So basically they are using the forecasted rainfall from the IMD for the flood forecasting purpose. Then the forecast time increased to 72 hours. So they have increased the forecasting time to 72 hours. Then the covering all major flood prone areas of the country. Then the automatic generation of the forecast with updated frequency of the 3 hours. Then the GIS based forecast dissemination portal. They have a GIS based forecast dissemination portal. So one can go in that portal and they can see the forecast there. So these are the flood forecasting system of the Central Water Commission. Now in the flood forecasting, important thing is the data collection and the forecast formulation. So data collection, one can go for the manual and the sensors. So basically as you have to go for the forecasting system, so the sensors are very, very important. So you have to reduce the time for the forecasting. So that your time lags should be less in the forecasting software, whatever you are using, so that the total time it takes, it should be less, so that you can have the more lead time for the forecast. Then the transmission is through wireless, telephone, mobile, or telemetry. Okay, and then you can formulate the forecast. Similarly, we do have, apart from the central organizations, state organizations are also having their own forecasting system for their tributaries and different small river basins. So like in UP have the Rapti River flood forecasting system. They have in Uttar Pradesh. So this system is based on the HEC model software. So this is the glimpse of the Rapti River flood forecasting system. So they also forecast the flood in the Rapti River basin at different sites. Okay, these are the Rapti barrage water level trend they have forecasted. So similarly, we do have the RT DAS for the Bhakla Byas system. So this was developed under the Hydrology Project 2. So this was a real-time decision support system for the Bhakla Byas management system. So this system is basically based on the MIC software. So here BBMB is basically responsible for the management and the operation of the Bhakla system and the distribution of water from different rivers like the river Ravi, Satluj and the Byas rivers. And the need of the real-time decision system is for accurate inflow forecast at reservoirs, scenario generation for the various forecasts, flood control and early warning system, equitable distribution of the water among partner states. So that was a need of the RTDSS. With that need, they have developed the real-time decision support system. And this is the data acquisition system for the RTDAS developed by the Bhakla Vyas Management Board. And this is the BVMB telemetry stations they are using in the RTDSS. Then they are also using the remote sensing data. So these are the different remote sensing data. They are using the global data, European central data, and the regional data, but they are using for the to forecast the flow. So these are all the real-time data structure they are using. And this is the real-time decision support system. This is the information flow, data acquisition system, data storage and management, modeling tools, results visualization, and the dissemination. So these are the different things they are using. Then the forecasting system and the event analysis. So they have this forecasting system. So whatever the data they are gathering for the weather forecasting services, they are going to the system. Okay. And then precipitation, temperature, they have the hydrological modeling tools. As I mentioned, that Mike 11 is a hydrological modeling tool they are using, and for the forecasting of the flood. Okay. With that, and then they are just forecasting the inflow into the reservoir. Then another thing is the floodplain. So one thing is that flood forecasting. Then important thing is if the water is coming to the river and it spills from the river, then it goes to the floodplain. So how much area is inundated in the region? Okay, so we have to understand how much is the floodplain. So that's why the floodplain zoning is a very, very important thing, so that we can understand that if a flood of a specific return period is coming to a particular region, so how much area is going to be inundated, and what are the safest place where we can construct houses, industries, or other things we can construct over there. So likewise we can plan over there. So Uttarakhand government they have passed this bill in 2016 for the floodplain zoning bill they have passed. So this I have just mentioned over here. So under this one, they have carried out a number of studies for the different regions to just identify the floodplain zones with the various return periods. Okay. So NIH has also carried out some of the pilot studies for different reaches in the Uttarakhand to demarcate the floodplain zones. So here this is the methodology of the floodplain zoning. So we have developed this methodology, and accordingly now the Uttarakhand government is doing the same floodplain zoning for the other rivers also, other parts of the country, other parts of the state they are doing the floodplain zoning. So it is using the time series data, spatial data, and the field data, and with that we develop the floodplain zones. This is the two stretches during the pilot studies we have taken, that the Haridwar stretch and the Uttarkashi stretch. For that we have carried out the floodplain zoning. For that we have taken the various cross section. On the basis of that, the floodplain zones were planned, decided. Then the floodplain demarcation of the Yamuna River at Agra also we have developed. Our institute has carried out this study for the floodplain demarcation in the river Yamuna. So here the floodplain demarcation of the Yamuna River at Agra we have carried out. This is the flood frequency analysis for the different return period floods, like 25 return in interval flood and different return period floods. We have just demarcated the floodplain zones. Okay, so these are the demarcation of the floodplain zones in the Yamuna River basin. Now another thing is the when we talk about the floods is the glacier lake outburst flood, GLOF. Nowadays, because of the climate change, a number of events of the GLOFs are taking place in various parts in country and other places in other countries also. We have seen that the danger of the glacier lake outburst flood is always there. So how to tackle with that one? How to model the glacier lake outburst flood? So that is also very, very important thing. So for that, if some glacial lake outburst takes place, so what are the hazard zone over there, in up to which area the flood water is going to come, how much time it will take to reach over there, what will be the depth of the water. So all those you can carry out through the hydrodynamic modeling. We can carry out the hydrodynamic modeling. Now this is the methodology for the glacial lake outburst flood modeling. So one can use the different hydrodynamic models like Mike 11 or the HECRAS for the glacial lake outburst flood modeling. Now For here also, we have carried out the glacial lake outburst flood modeling for various hydropower projects over there, like Lachung hydroelectric project, Sikkim, the National Institute of Hydrology. We have carried out the studies for the glacial lake outburst flood for the hydropower projects. So it includes the identification of the potentially dangerous glacial lake, and in case of the any eventuality if the lake outburst takes place, then how much flood water is going to reach at the project site. So all these things one can just carry out. Okay, one can simulate through the hydrodynamic models, all those things. So these kinds of studies we have carried out. Then for the Tawang hydroelectric power project in Arunachal Pradesh, we have carried out studies. Now, once we carry out the glacial lake outburst flood studies, important thing is that one can go for the emergency action plan for the Glock also. Okay, if glacial lake outburst flood takes place over there, some glacial lake breach is there, flood water is coming in the downstream time. So what are the action plan we can have to safeguard the downstream side? So with that, we have the first part, we have to go for the Glock modeling. So the modeling, we know that how much water is going to reach in the downstream side, how much is the how much time it will take to reach over there, what is the depth of the water, how much area it is going to inundate. Okay, what are the velocities of the water? So all these things through the modeling we can find out. Then we can have certain emergency action plans. Means the possible emergency action plans means the notification flowchart we can develop, means the watch condition notification flowchart, failure condition notification flowchart, and the termination and the flow of responsibility. Means the listing of the different suppliers and the agencies for supply and necessary material at the time of the emergency. So all those things you can have under the emergency action plan. You can plan all those things in the for the downstream side. Similarly, apart from the glacial lake outburst flood modeling, another important flooding cause is the dam break flood. So in case of the any dam failure, downstream area is going to be inundated. So how much area is going to be inundated in case of the dam failure? So that one can again find out through hydrodynamic modeling. So now under the DRIP scheme, which is the Ministry of Jal Shakti scheme is there, and Central Water Commission is carrying out this scheme. So under that, the emergency action plan of the various dams in the countries are being prepared. So our institute, National Institute of Hydrology, has also carried out a number of EAP studies, and we are also in process of carrying out the number of studies for different states. We are still carrying out. So under this scheme, basically we do carry out the first of all the simulation of the glacial this dam break flood, and then preparation of the emergency action plan. These are the two parts are being carried out in such studies. So one is that finding out the how much flood water is going to come if the dam failures take place in the downstream side. So this is being carried out through the dam break analysis. Then we do prepare the emergency action plan. So the purpose of preparing the emergency action plan for the dam break flood is the flood propagation due to the breach of the dam, then the warning time and the possible maximum water level downstream of the dam after breach, then the flood inundation area, then the residents and the village affected in the event of the breach, then the shelters and identification of the route, then the listing of the different suppliers and the agencies of supply and necessary material at the time of the emergency. So what are the different routes are there to which you can get the supplies to the affected people, what are the shelters? So all these routes you can define. So all those things you can have. Now, another important part is for the flood management is the early warning system. Okay, so early warning system either for the flood forecasting or the flood management. Okay, you can have. So in the key elements of the early warning system is the monitoring and warning of the services. You can have then the risk knowledge, then the dissemination and the communication and the response capabilities. So there are different parts of the early warning system. So basically, if you have an early warning system, either for the GLOF or for the flash floods, okay, so you can have the proper telemetry system. You can just transfer the data to the control stations. Okay, you have to have the proper hydrodynamic model or the hydrological model so that you can forecast how much runoff is being generated from the rainfall falling in the catchment. Okay, how much runoff will be generated, and if that runoff is being routed through the channel, so how much flood will be there in the downstream side. So all these things, and so that through the early warning system, immediately you can, prior to taking the event, you can just give the information to the downstream side that this may take place, and these are the situation in the downstream side. So all, as the name suggests, that the early warning system. So basically, you are giving the early warning to the people residing in the downstream side in that area. Then, when we talk about the flooding, so there are certain challenges and the way forward. So for dealing and tackling various kinds of the floods, okay, you have to have the proper things, how to manage all those things. So basically, we have seen that there are various methodologies to just manage the floods. So here, basically, if you go for I talk about the way forward, so real-time flood warning and system should be developed. So we have to have in our country, still we don't have the real-time flood forecasting system in most of the rivers. Either specifically if I talk about the flash flood rivers, so we don't have for the flash flood kinds of the river, we don't have these real-time flood forecasting or warning system. So we have to develop these kinds of the system over there. Then the close contours and the high resolution topographical data is very much required for the accurate forecasting of the flood inundated areas. So we should have the close contours and high resolution topographical data for those regions, specifically for the floodplain areas. Then the integration of all relevant data like the topographical, hydrological, meteorological, radar, sea surge, reservoir release, water utilization, etc. So we have to have proper integration of all these kinds of the data. Then the reliable inundation forecast modeling, 2D modeling we have to carry out. Then we should have the floodplain zoning for all the flood prone rivers. So it should be there. The floodplain zoning should be there. We should have proper, as I mentioned that Uttarakhand government has passed a bill for the floodplain zoning. So other states, they should also adopt for the floodplain. They should go for the floodplain zoning. Then the flash flood advisory, we have to develop the flash flood advisory. Still, we don't have that flash flood advisory over there. Then the urban flood management plan, we have to have the proper urban flood management plan, because in the last few years, we have seen that in the last few decades, we have seen that the urban flooding is also a major problem in our country. So we should have a proper plan for the urban flood management. So that's all I wanted to talk about in this my lecture. Thank you very much. Any question?
Thank you very much, sir, for providing insight on some of the major flooding events across the country and the key elements that are fabricating the environment for such flooding events. And you have also discussed the objective of integrated flood risk management beside the initiatives that are taken for flood monitoring and forecast dissemination in the country. And as you are rightly highlighted that to strengthen community resilience, reduce flood risk management, and create the coordination of multiple activities such as deployment planning, land use management, flood warning, community involvement, as well as enhancing the resilience of our physical infrastructure. And once again, thank you very much, sir. Let me check, sir, if there are some questions for you. Or, sir, this question is from Mr. Mohit Roy, and his question is: in case of coastal region, what should be main key point in the flood management system? As in case of West Bengal, every year coastal regions are flooded.
Yeah, it's a very good question. As far as the coastal region is concerned, coastal region floods are mainly because of the cyclonic floods. Mostly they are, and sometimes you just see the river, like especially if you're talking about the West Bengal or other areas. So the rivers which are coming from the upstream side, they also bring a lot of water in the downstream side. So on the delta, that areas there are flooding in those regions. So sometimes we say that one thing is the forecasting of the flood over there. Then important thing is the living with the flood is also very important thing in those regions, because they have the recurrent flooding over there. So we have to go for the floodplain zoning over the those areas. So we have to see at what recurrence interval floods are coming, whether they are coming on the 5 years recurrence interval, 3 years recurrence interval. So accordingly, we can plan the all habitations and other things over in those areas accordingly.
Thank you very much, sir. And second question is from Mr. Daniel Abbas. Which software are used for 2D modeling and how the data is obtained to stimulate the data? And sir, another question which is like similarly to this. Good afternoon, sir. A small query. We have seen various models close to sea beaches that protect the tidal flows on the side. Can something similar be done to reduce the devastation caused by floods?
As far as the software is concerned, one can use there are a number of softwares are available. So one software is the Mike 11, which is a priced software. One can use the Mike 11 software or Mike 21, we can say, for the 2D modeling. Nowadays, it is coming as a Mike River based Mike River with the name of the Mike River. Then another Mike River Hydro. Then another software is the HECRAS. One can use the HECRAS software for the 2D modeling. So they can use the high-class model for the 2D modeling. Then as far as the second question is concerned, regarding the, what was that second question?
Second question is, we have seen various models close to sea beaches that protect the tidal flows on the sides. Can something similar be done to reduce the devastation caused by floods?
Yeah, one can have those things. Basically here, more important is the planning is more important. It's basically you see in the flood, when we talk about the flood management. So management is the major issue. You cannot always protect the flood, okay, or reduce the flood. Flood reduction is basically from the structures. If you are constructing any structure, you can protect the flood. But important thing is the we can go for the non-structural measures over there. So in most of the region, these are the most important things which we can adopt. That means the non-structural measures, so that we can plan the area according to whatever the information we get from the non-structural measures. Yeah.
And sir, this is the last question from Ms. Prachi Yadav. What human factors contribute to flooding and how can they be avoided?
Yeah, right. Human practices, as I mentioned earlier, that normally what happens, people encroach the floodplain areas. They encroach even the riverbed also. Normally what happens once you have constructed any structures in the river, like if you have constructed the dam, so automatically what the dam does, it controls the flood water to the downstream side. So basically in most of the years, you just see if the frequency of the flooding is every 5 years flood is coming in the downstream side. So because of the construction of any structure over there, this flood frequency is reducing. And what happens in the downstream side, when the frequency is reducing, that means that regularly that much flow water is not coming to the riverbed and the floodplain area. So slowly people start encroaching those areas. Okay, people start residing over those areas. And this causes basically the flooding. Once the flood water is released from the dam side or the structures, so that area is got inundated. So these are the important things. And even small channels and other things, tributaries also, people go and encroach over there. They are constructing buildings and houses over there. So this also causes the inundation in those areas. So basically we don't have to disturb the natural drainage system in the catchment.
Thank you very much, sir, for answering the queries of our participants. And once again, thank you very much for sparing your valuable time and providing us, as well as our participants, this opportunity to learn from your vast experience and expertise. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you.
So now for the second talk, I pass on the floor to Dr. Harjeet Kaur, who is junior consultant in National Institute of Disaster Management. And today, Dr. Kaur will be enlightening us on urban flood management. So with this one, I pass on the stage to you, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Anil sir, for giving me this opportunity to present my view on urban flood management for our country. So I hope my PPT is visible to all. Thank you. As previous speaker, Dr. A.K. Rohani, broadly explained what is urban flooding, its causes in our country and impacts, and how we can deal with and how we can manage this situation for our country. So basically, urban flooding is significantly different from a rural flooding, as urbanization leads to developed catchments which increase the flood peaks from 1.8 to 8 times and flood volume by up to 6 times. So consequently, flooding occurs very quickly due to faster flow time. और जैसा कि हमें पता ही है कि urban areas are densely populated and people living in the vulnerable areas suffer due to flooding, sometimes resulting in loss of life. And it is not only the event of flooding, but the secondary effect of exposure of the infections also has its toll in terms of human suffering, loss of livelihoods, and in extreme cases, loss of life. So let's discuss the cause of urban flooding in India. The major cause of urban flooding is unplanned urbanization, as Lohani sir told, followed by the expansion of the urban areas and metal road. Construction of building in low-lying areas, you can take an example, Delhi Yamuna case, which is the example of the development in Yamuna belt, and that belt facing flooding in a yearly basis. So then one of the important cause is a lack of coordination and maintenance of the structures, and also the climate change that will also lead to the urban flooding in our areas. I'm not discussing the type of urban flooding because sir already touched upon this thing. Now, urban flood risk, how we can analyze this? So as we know that floods are caused by the natural factor or by a combination of natural and human factor. And we know that risk is the probability of loss and can be expressed as hazard into vulnerability. So flood hazard depends on flood magnitude, such as flood depth, velocity, and duration. And vulnerability may be defined as the condition determined by the physical, social, economic, and environmental factors which increase the susceptibility of the community to the impact of hazard. And when flood water physically encroach on people and infrastructure, then the vulnerability of people and infrastructure is decisive for the degree of harm and damage. Then the second equation says risk is the probability of loss, and it depends on 3 elements: hazard, vulnerability, and exposure. So if any of these 3 elements in risk increase or decrease, then the risk increases or decreases respectively. While exposure refers in the context of floods only to the question whether people or assets like physical infrastructures in the path of the flood water or not, then the vulnerability may be defined as the conditions determined by the physical, social, economic, and environmental factor or process which increase the susceptibility of community to the impact of the hazards. I'm not discussing the impact of urban flooding because sir already discussed this. Yeah, these are some cases of urban flooding in our country, like Ahmedabad flood, Delhi flood, Chennai, Hyderabad, the Jamshedpur, Srinagar flood. So these are a couple of examples of urban flooding in our country. So national status is already discussed by the Lohani sir. So here I will be covering the national guideline for the management of urban flood developed by the National Disaster Management Authority. So here they have basically discussed the issues of urban flood like comprehensive risk management, factoring risk in development planning, coordination among the different institutions, lack of information sharing, disintegration investment decision, and lack of consultation with the stakeholder. So all these talking means the impact and the factors were discussed in the guideline, national guideline, which were developed by the NDMA. So those are interested in this guideline, so you can easily download this guideline from the website. Then issues in urban flooding disaster risk management. So I have already discussed the issues. Then early warning system, which were already discussed by the Lohani sir. So I'm just skipping this part. Yeah. The digital city concept, which I would like to share with you. This concept was developed by the Price and Wojnowicz in 2008, where they have discussed the key element of disaster management planning and introduces the digital city concept with the field of study of urban hydroinformatics, which attempts to provide the central knowledge content between domain data and end user, as you have seen in this figure. So the main feature of the digital city system are a GIS-based system, a center for data storage. Third is data only spatial and temporal data, but also city plans like regulation, standards, SOPs. Then fourth, they have mentioned the model for each urban water process, which permit the interaction between them. Then data and result manipulation tool, communication tool, and interface cell, which could be run on either a web-based or a standalone platform. So the main focus of this digital city concept is on creating an environment in which end user responsible for various aspects of disaster management plan, which are empowered to appreciate the various flood related problems. As a result, to make better judgments, improve decision, and efficient action plan through the decision support tools. So certainly the list of end user of the digital city platform should not be limited to the planner and the disaster management agency only. A wider audience, including different stakeholder groups and the public, should also have access to such platform. So typically several steps are required before we can identify risk and come up with the most appropriate measures for the proactive flood management. So an important part of the process depicted in this figure is the risk assessment. So in order to evaluate the risk to the communities, properties, and infrastructure effectively, it is important to estimate the distribution of hazards and the magnitude of flood-related damage. So generally, such damages are divided into uh, tangible damages, tangible damages are properties, infrastructure, and then intangible, like loss of social values, loss of life, anxieties. So tangible damage may be classified further into direct and indirect damages. So it's depend upon the data available for your study area. Then you can classify your data according to the data availability for a geographical region. And this is the flood hazard map example, and already sir shown how India is doing a flood hazard map zoning planning for their for our country for different areas. So these are some institute, universities in India where for urban flood studies, monitoring, assessment, scientific research is going on. So you can, researcher or the scientific community concerned these, their website like IIT Mumbai, NRSC, NIH. So you can, Anna University, so you can go through their website and download their guideline or activities they are doing for urban flood studies in our country. So the key takeaways from my presentation is that municipalities are well advised to spend adequate resources for comprehensive flood risk assessment only if there is a data which clearly indicates which neighborhood are most at risk. Successful measures can be planned. Information about existing flood risk form, and then we need a community participation in flood risk assessment. Then we want flood management measures that have to be planned across the administrative and sectoral boundaries. Then we should promote for up and downstream aspect that have to be factored in urban flood risk management. So successful urban flood risk management is only possible if different measures comprising structural and non-structural, as Lohani sir told, and we need a special and organizationals, both these things in a combined way for the urban flood risk management. So this is all about my presentation. Thank you very much, sir. And back to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kaur, for your talk on urban flood management, providing insight on various phases of risk of urban flooding and what are the reasons of our built environment is facing such scenario of urban flooding and the interferences done for its management. And indeed, we need to enhance the resilience of our built environment as it increased by all the major frameworks for disaster risk reduction and resilience, like Sendai framework also exhorted to reduce the disaster damage to our critical infrastructure and also to avoid disruption of basic services. Likewise, the Prime Minister 10-point agenda on DRR also highlighted that we need to mainstream DRR in the deployment activities so that we can avoid and minimize the losses from disasters. So once again, thank you very much. Let me check if there are some questions by participant or not. Ma'am, as there are no queries raised by our participant, if there will be any, we will be sharing with you through mail. So once again, thank you very much for joining us. So now for validation session, we are joined by Professor Surya Prakash, Head GMR Division, NIDM. And now I pass on the stage to Professor Surya Prakash, Head GMR Division, NIDM, and request sir for his validatory address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Anilji, for providing me this opportunity to join this program in the valediction. Actually, I would first of all regret my inability to attend the inaugural program due to my preoccupation with another important meeting with NDMA, focusing on our one of the most important portals, India Disaster Resources Network and its utilization. Particularly when we are talking about floods, they are very much recurring phenomena affecting a large part of our country. Annually, we are incurring heavy losses in terms of damages to the infrastructure, economy, livelihood, agriculture, as well as other resources. Particularly, if I state we are having this program jointly with the state of Bihar, which is one of the worst affected state, which witnessed the devastating floods, which were of very high socioeconomic significance, particularly in the years 1987, I remember 2004, 2008, 2015, and even during 2019, 2020 also. So floods have been affecting, and one of the famous rivers, Bihar has number of rivers which are perennial in nature, flowing in the terrains of the state, are actually bringing floods in its vicinities. The river Kosi has been termed, in fact, as sorrow of Bihar because of the devastating impact of the floods brought by it. So therefore, since we have the knowledge, information and ideas about when do they occur, why do they occur, and how do they cause the damages. So as we say in disaster management, if I know I can manage. If I don't know, maybe it is difficult, we have to learn about it. Then only it is possible to manage those disasters or reduce their risks. So in terms of flood forecasting, modeling, our Central Water Commission has been doing regular studies and issuing alerts and early warning to the concerned stakeholders. And we can surely reduce, even if we are not able to avoid or prevent those floods to happen, at least the losses and damages from these floods. Not only we are incurring economic losses or environmental losses, we are also incurring the loss of human lives of the people who are getting trapped into these floods. So I hope the resource persons who have deliberated during their presentation on this theme have covered those guidelines, procedures, and plans for flood risk reduction and resilience. And as we say in disaster management for all inclusive approach, that's why we had put up it as strengthening with integration of flood risk reduction. So it has to be considered along with other hazards and in consultation with all relevant stakeholders. So no one should be left behind, and connectivity with the last mile and the last person is very, very important. These kind of webinars will surely enrich our delegates and participants who must have noted down the important key inputs given by the experts. And I would urge them to actually use those inputs and the knowledge learned from this webinar into their practices, so that the benefits can be accrued from those informations, knowledge and ideas which has been shared with you. Knowledge, we say, is power, and its timely usage and implementation can surely help us save our own lives and protect others. So floods में बहुत सारी आपदाएं और भी आती हैं besides the flood itself, and these need to be taken care along with the floods. There have been instances where the same areas during the lean periods of the monsoons, the rainfall, they have faced the drought situations as well. So it requires an optimization, conservation, and rejuvenation and recharging of water at times in the drought situations. Whereas in the floods, we need to actually divert and control the spread and speed of the river waters, which are overwhelming or are the increasing in terms of the discharge and also the volumes of the water passing through a particular area. So a lot of structural measures have been taken by the respective state authorities, but we also need to focus our attention to non-structural measures as well as the risk sharing and transfer measures for risk reduction and resilience in flood-prone areas. So I wish all the best to all the participants and distinguished speakers as well as the delegates of this program. During the COVID-19, we have learned several new lessons that we have to act in a different manner than we used to do during earlier flood times. So all those actually should be well documented, and those local areas by the local people and particularly focusing on the lessons learned and also highlighting the good and the bad practices that have taken place during these periods. So the way ahead in terms of our Sunday framework for disaster risk reduction, which is the fourth priority action, actually focuses on build back better, so that in future we can reduce the incidences as well as the impacts of the disasters, including the floods. So I wish all the best to everyone, safe, healthy and good quality life on an equitable, justifiable and right-based manner with good fraternity. and hope not only the participants will benefit themselves by implementing the suggestions, but also they will share it with others who have not been able to participate in this program due to some regions or restrictions with the time availability of time or network or any other regions. So therefore, kindly do share it with your friends, your family, and your colleagues and other experts, so that all remain safe. As we say in COVID-19, if others are safe, I am safe. If I am safe, I can help others make safe or protect themselves. So thank you very much and wish you all the best. Back to you, Anil.
Thank you very much, sir, for summing up today's webinar through your valedictory address and sharing your wisdom words on different spectrum of flood risk management with us as well as with our participant. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. So now moving to vote of thanks. With validation session with the validity address of Professor Surya Prakash, we draw the curtain of today's webinar on strengthening integrated flood risk management that is jointly organized by National Institute of Disaster Management, Ministry of Home Affairs, in collaboration with Department of Geology, Central University of South Bihar. But before closing, I take this opportunity to propose a vote of thanks. And at the outset, I would like to thank Professor K.N. Singh, Vice Chancellor, Central University of South Bihar, and Dr. Praful Kumar Singh, Head Department of Geology, Central University of South Bihar, for gracing the inaugural session of today's webinar, as well as I would also like to thank Professor Surya Prakash, Head GMR Division and NIDM, for gracing the validation session of today's webinar and enlightening us through their respective insightful deliberations. And I also take this opportunity to thank our eminent speakers, Dr. Anil Kumar Lohani, Head Surface Water Hydrology Division, NIH Roorkee, and Dr. Harjeet Kaur, Junior Consultant, NIDM, and for providing us this opportunity to learn and to gain from their respective knowledge, their respective experiences, expertise. And I would also like to thank Shri Taj Hassan, IPS Executive Director, NIDM, for his guidance and for his support in organizing this event. Gratitude is also due to our participant who have joined us and actively take part in their technical session of today's webinar. And conducting such events, such webinars, it required collective action. So I thank my GMRD team, Dr. Harjeet Kaur, Mr. Hari, Mr. Ajit, Dr. Haldar, Ms. Vinita, and Ms. Tipali, beside our IT team of NIDM, Mr. Balaji and Mr. Shobit, for their continuous support in organizing such webinars as well as 3-day training programs. So in the end, I would request participants to please follow all the precautionary measures for COVID-19. So thank you once again to all the participants, to all the panelists, as well as other dignitaries who have joined us in this webinar. Thank you very much.